Agricultural protests threaten to capsize the food industry worldwide. But to suggest there's a globalist agenda is a conspiracy theory, right? Hello there, you 5.7 million awakening wonders. Thank you for joining me on this voyage towards truth. If no one's told you you're fantastic today, let me be the first to tell you that I respect you. I see that you are awakening. I feel that there is a change. And as much as things are crazy out there, as much as we're being flooded by disinformation and doubt, as much as we're being criticized and condemned, we are equal to their challenge and we are arising beautifully. If you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. It is vital for us to have every means possible to subvert the tendencies of the algorithm, to ride above it and to rise above it. Sometimes when you hear things like, oh, the agricultural protests are a result of a globalist agenda that has the intention of collapsing the farming industry and taking farms from small-scale farm holders and putting it in the hands of centralist interests, and that's why there's these protests, you think, nah, that must be a conspiracy theory. That's why experts like Vandana Shiva, who can describe to you exactly how this process is being undertaken, are invaluable. I had a massive conversation with Vandana Shiva, 33 minutes long, naturally. Come on, don't be a conspiracy theorist. She explained to us exactly how there is a plan to turn everything into data. There is a plan to collapse independent farms worldwide. And the pretense that it's to bring about ecologically responsible practices is a disingenuous one. Because our previous interview with Vandana was so successful, we've decided to give you the whole video for free right here, right now. This is the whole conversation, unedited, for you. Please share it around, particularly if you care about the agricultural industry, particularly if you know people that are farmers, particularly if you know protesters that are concerned about this, particularly if you know now that the ecological justifications that are being given are disingenuous, illegitimate, and plainly untrue, then you should be sharing this video with as many people as possible. Stay right to the end, because we only give you content that's going to enrich you, evolve you, and make you smarter and better equipped to cope with this world. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. Let me know who else you want to see us talk to. There's a link in the description to The Seeds of Vandana Shiva, a film about her, and please stay to the very end and hit me up in the comments and let me know what you think about this important video. Thank you.
Vandana Shiva, I'm so honoured that you have joined us today.
I'm very happy to be here physically with you, Russel.
I feel like that you are one of the most important voices in the activist movement, and particularly with regard to the challenges we face with the ongoing rise of globalism and its observable consequences. I'd like to start off, if I may, by asking you about the current Dutch agricultural protests. As a person that's only taken my information about this protest movement from the mainstream media, I would see this issue seems to have been framed as, well, there are new ecological regulations that need to be introduced to prevent Dutch farmers irresponsibly using harmful toxic fertilizers, and that their protests have been framed very negatively by the media. Can you tell me, is there a different perspective on that you could share?
Well, there are many different ways of looking at and responding to the crisis we face. We do face a serious crisis caused by industrial agriculture. 50% greenhouse gases come from farming with fossil fuels and chemicals, and shifting food long distance, transforming it with ultra-processing, packaging it. All of this has added up to greenhouse gases. But that same system that is punishing the farmer is as punishing the earth and is punishing the consumers through disease. When did it start? The chemical fertilizers are a byproduct of Hitler's regime. The IG Farben group of cartel of corporations, combined with Standard Oil of the US, used fossil fuels to fix atmospheric nitrogen by burning fossil fuels at very high temperature. Now, there are better ways to fix nitrogen, and that is, well, let the earthworms give you 40 kilograms per hectare. Let the soil mycorrhiza work. So what's happened is the same people who are pushing a very anti-nature, anti-people, anti-life globalization agenda shaped a system that has caused a problem, forced the farmers into that system to use chemical fertilizers to get the cows off the grass and into factory farms, then feed them with GMO soya that's chopping down the Amazon, 40% of soya goes for animal feed. Another 40% goes for biofuel. It's not feeding the world. All of this was forced on people through regulation. It was forced through subsidies. 50% of the European tax money was going to create this kind of agriculture. Now, the same people who caused the problem are saying, farmers, you're responsible. It's a bit like saying to a person who went obese because of junk food, to say, you are responsible. No, the junk food industry is responsible. The Pepsis and the Cokes are responsible. The fertilizer. These are identifiable players. And there's a principle of justice called polluter pays. The original cause of pollution is the manufacturers and the governments who subsidized it, and the governments that promoted the false idea that without chemicals you can't grow food, and billionaires today who are promoting that same false idea, Bill Gates. So there are huge numbers of alternatives, but farmers need to be given a 5 to 10 year period of transition, and the structures that were created to promote chemicals should be used to promote ecological agriculture. You need new research, you need new schools, and you definitely cannot punish the victim. Farmers are a victim of this system.
So these are systemic problems that have complex origins that even include that great moniker of 20th century evil, the Nazi Party. But at the point that we hear about it, it is reductively conveyed as an issue that for which the agricultural industry in the hands of individual farmers is what's culpable. It's so interesting the way that information is rendered. And also, Vandana, sometimes I have to marvel almost at the mendacity of a system that can create problems, present solutions, and at every step of the way, it's to the ongoing advantage of centralized financial and sometimes state powers, and to the continuing disadvantage of us as individuals and as the inhabitants and partners of the planet. It's extraordinary to me. Sometimes it's because some of the connections that you have just made in answering that question are difficult to make, and sometimes it's because those stories are simply never told. So in short, you're saying that really we should be supporting those farmers and recognising how this admittedly ecologically difficult practice came about.
Absolutely. And I think we definitely need to see the world that the greedy want to create. All of natural resources in their hands, all of land in their hands. The same billionaires who are telling the farmers, forget the land, take money and leave it, want that land. The same people who say, oh, food is unnecessary, we're going to make lab food, are the very people who are then also investing in land to have real food. It's the ultimate colonization that's happening, and it's condensing everything that's gone wrong. In my view, the witch hunts were really killing those people who lived and taught the life that we are part of nature. The witches were teachers of oneness with nature. They were the ones who were hunted down. And that for a century or 2 centuries, 9 million people killed in Europe. It was a killing of the ecological mind. The colonialism, then the chemical agriculture from Hitler's Germany, the new GMO push, the earlier push, the new push. All of this is combining to say we will disenfranchise you, we will not let you make your living, we will not let you have a livelihood, because with the earth, with her animals, with her trees, we can create life. The fact that people are marching in every country on cost of living should become a deeper question. The right to live.
When so many powerful forces combine to create a power matrix, why is it that these ideas are continually dismissed as conspiracy theories? When you just described, the killing of the ecological mind through the witch hunts, when you described that, explained that colonization is in a sense an extrapolation on the dominion that's already been established with the domestic population, and what we are seeing now is a billionaire class land grab, where the idea that we will have unmediated relationships with nature becomes less and less likely. Why is it so difficult to have these conversations, and why is it so difficult to achieve alliances when it seems that so many of us have shared interests? Why is it that why is there not right now a global agricultural movement that ordinary people are engaged in?
Well, I think the three reasons why the natural alliances are not emerging without effort, and we will have to put love and effort into it. I mean, my next commitment is to reach out to conventional farmers and show them it is possible to have ecological agriculture rich in nitrogen. In our movement, Navdanya, the nitrogen in our soil through ecological methods is 100% more than it was 20 years ago. And in the chemically farmed soils, it's 22% less. In effect, nitrogen fertilizers are a way of extracting soil nitrogen by killing the soil organisms. Why don't people know this? Number one, the science was distorted. When I started this work in 1984, the text used to say soil is an empty container. The soil is living, the richest ecosystem. Without fertilizers, you cannot feed the world. And that is what was taught in every agriculture university. It was all our public money was used to push agriculture in that direction. The second reason why people don't know and we are not having these conversations is the billionaires have bought the mainstream media. They've totally bought the mainstream media. And even the social media is their media. And Google has said, we have to defeat Mother Nature. That's their project.
Can you, using perhaps the example of Bill Gates, demonstrate to us, or at least explain to us, how there is billionaire power in the purchasing of land, control of the media, control or influence at least of a global agenda? Can you talk us through the various aspects of how that kind of centralized financial power is achieved, Vandana?
So, Microsoft became as rich as it is, first because basically Gates just pirated software. It was BASIC was a public software created by college professors. But he also then became richer because in the first free trade agreement, which is globalisation, written by corporations, in the first WTO meeting, he ensured that information would not be taxed. So all of the money they were making out of exchange of information was becoming absolute profit. And it's zero taxation for them. They became billionaires. Then they started to influence other areas. And other areas included his creating Gates Ag one agriculture for the whole world. He started to push the use of digital technologies where they were not necessary. And worse, where they took away our freedoms. I have a whole chapter in my book on the digitalization of money. But now he's dreaming of digitalization of agriculture. Why don't you need farmers? He talks about farming without farmers. Because he has a model of an agriculture where there'll be digital surveillance, there'll be drones, there will be driverless tractors, no people, but even more capital intensive and chemical intensive farming. And so Bayer, which has bought Monsanto, has made a clear commitment that the plant base, it's a chain, we'll do the same agriculture that is leading to actions which are forcing the Dutch farmers to respond and shut down Holland. But we'll now expand it on a larger scale, drive every farmer off the land. We will own all the land. Bill Gates is already the biggest farmland owner of America. But if you look at how quickly land is being grabbed, and even the Dutch phenomena is a land grab phenomena, if you look how quickly land is being grabbed, it is for an economy without people, an economy of even more external inputs, more capital intensive. But it's an economy that ensures that most humans as producers are driven off, and most humans as consumers only get worse food.
Vandana, will you explain to me how the land grab idea works? For example, in the case of Dutch farming, or in your own country, how does the globalist agenda extract land from independent farmers? How does it work?
Well, we shouldn't forget that colonialism was a globalist agenda, where on one little island nation where we are sitting decided that the land in India was theirs.
We were just trying to help.
And they basically said the land belongs to them. So the peasants of India had to pay a rent. And then they appointed landlords to collect the rent. They created an administrative system where our administrator, even today, is called a collector because his job was to collect the rents and send it out here. Land grab is the way wealth is controlled. Because even though the Baconian Cartesian idea and the fictions of capitalist theory, Adam Smith, that nature creates scarcity, we create the wealth, that is a denial of nature's creativity. And by denying nature's creativity, you rob the land and then move her creativity to your service. And that is what is at the agenda still today. They want the earth to be creative for them while continuing to deny that she is creating, because they are the creators. The Dutch, the agriculture minister said very clearly about 50 to 70% of the farmers must go. And if they don't change their practices, and he's not facilitating them to change their practices to the ecological viable option that would not generate billionaire profits, that would give back life to the earth. And we are doing a course, 1st to 12th of October, on return to earth. How can we repair the earth and become free ourselves? He has said, the agriculture minister said very clearly, and if they don't shift immediately, their land will be taken. Now, governments don't do cultivation. In Soviet Russia, they used to, but most governments don't do the cultivation themselves. What will happen is, there aren't that many farmers left anyway in Netherlands. Take the remaining farmers' land and hand it over to the corporations and the billionaires. And the corporations are no more corporations that are independent. As my book Oneness 1 versus 1% shows, every one of them is owned by the asset management funds of the billionaires, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the State Streets, 70%. So the money of the billionaires is deciding the policies, they're deciding the narrative, they're deciding what the newspapers, the Guardians and the BBC will say. They are deciding what people will do and what people will know.
That's a very interesting facet of this, that there is, to a degree, centralised ownership. Friends of mine that are, that understand venture capitalism, for example, better than I do, and God knows that's not a high qualification, would say that like a company like Vanguard or BlackRock, they're so diffuse and decentralized because there's so many participants that it's difficult for there to be a centralized agenda. But you would say that agenda is already being provided by the sort of motifs and imperatives of capitalism as already established, I suppose. And Vandana, that's fascinating that a media narrative can be controlled in that way, that land can be extracted in that manner, that it is a reiteration and a repeat of the colonial models of the previous centuries, which in my mind had a certain elan and a certain style. They were done under the emblem of a royal family. I'm just being patriotic. I'm not pro-colonialism. I'm against it. It's just I was aware that you were Indian and I was British while that was happening. I was thinking, I'm being blamed for this.
Not you.
I'd have been one of those witches in the woods trying to get down with nature. That'd have got me first. I was thinking there that, honestly, one of the things that bothers me, this apparent the ongoing culture war which seems to exist between sort of traditional, maybe, and one aspect of tradition could be patriotism, and progressive politics, and one aspect of that could be identity politics. This sort of ongoing conflict between them often uses ideas around ecology and climate. There's an assumption that the right is not interested in the environment, even though they're interested in their nation, which is, of course, a natural entity at its heart. And I wonder, it seems that one thing that bothers me, many things bother me, but one thing that bothers me is the awareness of these corporations of the potency and validity of ecological arguments, because they are willing to use them. For example, I'm sure you're familiar with like ESGs and greenwashing, the sort of systems of reward that are deployed within the corporate world in order to exhibit apparent ecological awareness while not really doing anything. What do you think of these, in my view, disingenuous and phatic movements?
Well, just like there's green wash, there's social wash, there's justice wash. But the green of those leaves that are actually fixing atmospheric carbon dioxide and giving us the breath, our breath is coming from those leaves. We are those leaves, yeah, through the interconnectedness of the oxygen that is feeding our lungs. I think a big part of forgetting is that we are being made to forget that the finance that's being used to control is a fictitious wealth. Wealth means the state of well-being. You know, when you do breathing and you do yoga, you are in a state of well-being. Can't be measured in money. But this, first it was turned into capital, now it's turned into finance, and now it's being turned into natural asset corporations, a whole new invention they've created. ESG is old. Now they want to own entire forests, entire rivers, entire land. If you look at what was proposed by Rockefeller Foundation, which is the precursor to Bill Gates, he learned his game from them. Gates is, you know, every time he gets into trouble, he turns to what did the Rockefeller do to save their reputation. Rockefeller Foundation with the Wall Street, one month before the Glasgow Summit on Climate, launched this whole new natural asset companies. Companies that will own the natural assets in terms of the ecological services of nature. So instead of that leaf giving me my breath, that leaf's oxygen will be property, an asset to be traded. And they've created a very complex financial mechanism, and they're actually aiming at having in their hands $4,000 trillion. $4,000 trillion. While people lose their homes, people lose their food, people lose their work, people lose their ability to live. So this, I think this fictitious money and the stories that get told about how it was created with all kinds of invention and innovation. Innovation means only to make new. And yet the people who steal, the pirates, the people who stole our knowledge, our seeds, our basmati, our wheat, call themselves inventors just because they can claim a patent. A patent is not a reflection of an invention. So much has been stolen and said, we invented it. The neem that controls pests without killing people, we invented it. The seed, what my life's dedication to the seed has been, Monsanto, you did not invent the seed. You cannot take a patent on seed. Seed is evolution and continuity and creativity for billions of years and thousands of years of human farming. And you cannot take what is created by nature, created by people, and say, I invented it. And I think this false claim to appropriation as invention, appropriation as creativity, I think we are reaching the peak of it because everything's being patented. You're being patented, I'm being patented, our data's being patented. You know, we are big data, we are mines of big data. We are like a bauxite mine now.
Yes, I feel this process of turning all aspects of reality into a kind of centrally owned node, an expression of a deeper financial truth, is being enacted. You said earlier, and have referred to several times, the fundamental denial of nature that underwrites this ideology. And it seems then that the evocation of this nature may be part of a rebuttal to the ongoing colonization that you describe. Do you see cause, Vandana, for optimism in the current anti-globalist movements, the current farmer protests, and how might we infuse these localized issues that it appears to me can be easily undermined with ideals and ideas that might provide some more cohesion and an ability to succeed?
Well, you know, the power of nature is always at work till we become blind and deny it. And that's why, for me, Bacon, as the father of modern science, saying nature has to be subjugated. We have to give birth to a new masculine time of domination. And we will be superheroes, controlling the world through this new mechanistic reductionist framework, which was called science. That was at the heart of denial of seeing the power of nature, the creativity of nature, and also calling all the cultures that live that creativity as unscientific, not evidence-based. Life is the highest evidence. Data is not the highest evidence. A good, healthy body through yoga and Ayurveda, it's the body that is the evidence, not a reductionist data. So I think the ecological movement, the deep ecological movement, not this greenwashed propaganda of the corporations and the billionaires, that to me is a violation. It's a violation of nature. It's a violation of everything we know. But what we've seen with the Dutch protests, but you know, these 2 days while I've been in England has been amazing. 5 leaders gone. Boris Johnson lost his prime ministership. The president of Sri Lanka has had to run away from his palace, which has been overtaken by people. Wow. Abe has been shot dead. He used to promote militarism for Japan. So we've just seen these people who look totally powerful because they were protected by the big corporations and the big billionaires from whom they were getting instructions. And during the COVID period, they looked infallible, They'll never crumble. We've seen the power of people on the streets everywhere. But I think till the power of people and the power of nature, if they converge, we will be powerful. That's why our effort has to be to prevent the divide and rule policies, I don't think we can afford the ecological agriculture movement to be pitted against the conventional farming movement. Together we've got to say, we will take care of the earth. That's why we won't allow land grab.
Because the challenges is that, as you allude to, there is a kind of a great methodology to prevent cohesion appearing. It's like the idea that the current Dutch farm protest could somehow align with an ecologically oriented protest movement seems at this stage antithetical, because even in the framing, Vandana, it's like, if you watch on normal news, it will say, what's happening is these farmers, they're maniacs. They want to use fertilizer that's bad for the earth, and we've introduced this global regulation that's going to, for Mother Earth, prevent that. And so it's very difficult for that conversation to get off the ground. When you say there that that you believe that leaders get their instruction from corporations, even still, this is regarded as the terrain of the conspiratorial. People, if you say stuff like that, other than you actually, perhaps because you've bothered to learn some facts first, like when people say stuff like that, it's dismissed. People find it hard to engage in that. People find it hard to engage in the idea that it's literally true that democracy is redundant, almost irrelevant, that power takes place at a globalist level, that politicians are to some degree appointed by corporations, and the idea that an agenda that is supportive of the needs of human beings and of nature could be pursued is like, people have kind of forgotten it.
Yeah, but I think the erasure of memory is intentional. And that's why everywhere history is being rewritten. That's why before it is rewritten to make us forget, we must connect. Yeah, that's what I did in India. I worked with the farmers to remember that 1857 revolt against the East India Company, which shut the East India Company down, was a bread revolt. Farmers were being killed for not paying the taxes that were killing them. And so the farmers said, we'll reclaim our bread and our freedom. And because they were being arrested and killed, when they talked, they started to give bread to each other. And that's how the movement spread. When we had to launch the movement for seed freedom, I went back to Gandhi and his spinning wheel. He said, there was an empire of cotton where we were being impoverished, our farmers were dying. What did we do? We started to spin our own cloth. And I said, growing your own seed, growing your own food today is the freedom of today. And those who say these are conspiracy, well, just look at the rules of WTO and globalized free trade. Who wrote the intellectual property agreement of WTO? Monsanto, they admitted it. Who wrote the agreement on agriculture that's destroyed all the self-reliance and food sovereignty of people? Everyone's talking about the Ukraine war and Russia. But the reason African countries are hungry is because their ability to produce their food was destroyed by the right to dump by Cargill. Cargill wrote the agreement on agriculture. And then the junk food industry, the Pepsis and Cokes and Nestle's, wrote the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement and created the Codex Alimentarius to shut down healthy food and pushed the food that gave us illnesses, 75% chronic diseases. This is not a conspiracy. There is evidence that the corporations wrote the rules. Then it created the billionaires. Now the billionaires rule the world. And I call them the 1%, not because they're 1%, they're just a handful. And when you ask me, what's the optimism? For me, the optimism is a pathetic group of ignorant, selfish men are not more powerful than all the people who've occupied the palace of the president in Sri Lanka. the farmers who've occupied the streets of Netherlands. People have power. We've been made to think we are inert. We've been made to think nature is inert. And all it is a colonization of our mind. The minute we become free and say, we are part of nature, we are creative, and we are powerful. Powerful in a different way. Powerful in the way of Shakti. Powerful in the way of non-violent resistance, of absolutely refusing to be colonized.
Yes. So I understand. So we have to Chit Shakti. First the awareness, and then the awareness of the power.
And from there flows the fact that today a conventional farmer might be farming differently, but that farmer is still a human being, and that farmer cares for that land. And we have to start connecting that which is common rather than focusing on that which divides us. And I think identity politics of our times is being created by the money machine. Because if I'm a gardener, my identity is a gardener. And this is lovely, you know. When the British tried to create these Muslim Hindu identities, people would not fill the slot of religion. They would fill the slot of occupation. I'm a gardener. I'm a weaver. I'm a carpenter. And then the British removed the occupation identity. And because we have such mixed identities, people would say I'm Hindu Muslim because people go to the same shrines. Ajmer Sharif. No, you cannot be both. You know, the excluded middle. That excluded middle and then pitting people against each other is the divide and rule that rulers and empires have always used. And as long as we focus on being Earth citizens, we are all connected by this beautiful mother. We are all one humanity. And of course we have different skin colors, you know. I'm a woman, you're a man. It doesn't matter. At the end of it, it's our earth being, our earthiness, and our humanity that are our common denominators.
I understand. They create the sort of systems of definition, and with the system of definition, our nature is chaotic and must be controlled. Human beings are chaotic and naturally conflagratory. Human beings will fight. Unless there is a regulatory body that intercedes, you will destroy each other. I think this is one of the things that I most dislike is the misanthropic, and if there is such a word for nature, the hatred of nature and of humanity that underwrites these systems, that people are not beautiful, that nature is not beautiful, because there is complexity in human beings and there is complexity in nature, that nature can't be sentimentalized, that there is pain and death in nature, that these aspects have been bolted on to our inherent tendencies towards fear, our desire for comfort, to turn us, as you say, into these kind of inert occupants of a sanitized and immobile penitentiary where our energy is all vacuumed upward and away from us. But so then you believe, may I ask, Vandana, that the individualized awakening the individualized awakening, correctly educated and politicized, is the seed, if I may use your metaphor system, for regrowth?
Well, everything begins in the small that makes it. Yeah. The seed becomes the plant. All of these beautiful trees were seeds. And because in every individual, which is interconnected to everything else, the beautiful metaphor in Indian philosophy called Indra's net, that in the node of the net is everything else. Because of interconnectedness and the quantum entanglement, we know that. That was my background. That was my PhD, non-locality in quantum theory. Because we are interconnected and each of us is not an atom in terms of our individuality and autonomy, we are interconnected, self-organized beings. And as self-organized, we can govern ourselves. As interconnected, a change I make. If a quantum particle can make a change to something light years away, human beings changing themselves can start to change everything. And I do feel that simple act of eating, simple act of taking care of ourselves is part of an embedded web of life. That starts to make the changes. If people eat with consciousness, and they tell those farmers in the Dutch streets, we will eat from you, we will not punish you, we will not complain against you, we will work with you to help you go ecological, so that you and we coexist in the future in a beautiful emerging web. That, I think, is the science. Science tells us that Ancient spirituality teaches us that. Life teaches us that. And that's why I don't think anyone should become afraid that they are alone. We are never alone. Interconnectedness that can never be taken away from us.
Yes, I see how the sort of what the social conditions that reflect these economic and political ideas are, a sort of a sense of disconnection. This I can speak to personally, that I feel that sometimes that my only power is the power that I can achieve as an individual, grown in this country, grown in this time, colonized at the level of mind already. I felt like my power is the power that I can attain through their methods, through their systems. But it leaves a hangover and a contamination. It's like left me with the sense of separation. And this is in part what I am trying to overthrow in a kind of an inner revolution, to regain integrity with nature, inner and outer, after a sort of a difficult process of self-commodification. Thank you very much, Vandana, for the way that you explained things.
Such a joy, and love.
Thank you, amazing.
That conversation was from our first ever community event. If you want to be informed when we do live events online or in the real world, sign up to my mailing list. There's a link in the description, and I'll put an easy to click link up in the corner there in a minute. Let me just give you some of these comments from people talking about our previous clips. Beverly said, when are people going to wake up to what's happening all around us? Most people we know are burying their heads in the sand, hoping things will get back to normal. Thank you for turning the spotlight on these important issues. I wouldn't be able to do it without people like you. That's why I need you to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, sign up to our mailing list. Together, we become powerful. Individually, even if we're, famous or whatever, we got nothing. 67-old coach says, in 1984, when Vandana said she started her work, I was farming in Australia. We knew then what she is saying, but of course few listened. It's almost 40 years later. Thank you, Russell, and of course Vandana. Thank you, 67-year-old coach. Werner says, thanks, Russell, for addressing the Dutch farmers. It's incredible how much support this gets on an international level for such a little country. But what people don't realise is it starts small. When it affects everyone, it's too late. Don't let it get too late. Join this movement right now. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Sign up to my mailing list right now so you can become part of this community movement. Join this movement, sign that link. More important than any of that, and God knows it's important, stay free.